Penguin. Penguins in the North Pole gather for ice skating with Mr. Polar Bear in the Cantor Pond. A penguin young and strong named Contus asks some of his friends if he could eat some salmon in the bottom near a hole. Contus' friends say yes, and a walrus gets a fishing pole and says ready. And Contus reels his hook back and sinks his wooden tool pole in the hole, and minutes pass and Contus gets a fish bite, and they reel him up with Mr. Polar Bear and his heavy coat, and they find a ice fish. They agree they want more. So the gang say we should sink this hole and get more. So they agree and venture into town, where they're greeted by a clerk saying, "What are you venturing into town for?" And they all say, "We want to fish in the pond Cantor, but the hole is too small, and we only could get one salmon at the moment." So the clerk with his pointy glasses agrees, and runs off back into his shop, and him and his puffy white tail stick up, and he is accompanied by a snowfall as he lifts his hands out and gives the penguins a drill, and he asks to bring as many fish as they can alive back, and they agree and all say yes they will. And they venture back to the pond Cantor and start drilling outside the pond. A few minutes pass and the ice collapses into the water. And the ice remains floating. So they all solve that weight would bring the glacier down, so they all jump on the block. And they get tunneled under the water and the block tips over and they begin panicking. Minutes pass and Mr. Fox arrives with his car and hook and pulls the glacier out of the pond and the group is saved. And they all remain joyful and are accompanied by schools of fish and they begin striking the animals of the North Pole. And Mr. Fox yells and tells them to lift up the ice and place it back. The boys and girls swim out of the pond striking and guarding themselves as they leave and try moving the glacier though they cannot. But the schools of fish all follow him and they begin suffocating on the snow and freeze out. And the fox and in group all place the haul in the back of the car and they all drive back home and Mr. Fox tells them all to place the food on the shelves for his shop for sale and in his meat storage containers. They do this for a while, and day begins coming and Mr. Fox says whenever they need anything they can come back to his shop. And says another vendor from the US was coming to his shop soon and he was going to sell him crabs and otters. And he was going to repopulate the pond with them, and so if they and their families ever needed any fish or anything from his shop they were free to get some. So some cheered, but Contus the penguin wanted a school of fish still despite the great haul he had acquired. And he tried reviving a fish and then another to keep them thriving there, though they had all already died. And moments later the vendor arrived, and he was a fish himself, a catfish, and they all were scared when they saw him. And they asked if he could revive their pond that lost the majority of their inhabitants, the fish, because the ones they had previously were hostile and were hard to get, and the catfish said that he would be glad to help the children get their pond back up and running. So the group all were happy and took some salmon, and Mr. Fox and Mr. Catfish all began trading, merging shops online, and the town grew and was populous, now no longer a town in the North Pole. But a man named Santa Claus had arrived and began rewarding children on their good and bad behavior. And if the child made a mistake on his conduct, he was to send him an elf to guide him and not make the same mistake as he did that year, and if he grew in progress he would receive eggnog. And if a child was very good he would receive toys that he would have and cherish for his whole life. His group of reindeer would ride into town and guide him through the streets, alleys and bushes and shrubs all around the North Pole. And all the animals loved Santa. Santa Claus and his elves that would bring joy to the town. Eventually the town's mayor, Mr. Wolf, agreed that his town and Catfish Town had grown popular, his still being in the wild lakes and woods. And they created a train that would transport travelers from the North Pole to Sandoff. And the mayors, Mr. Wolf and Mr. Rabbit, would link together and show friendly relations that way. Mr. Rabbit's town individuals began alienating themselves and wearing costumes to scare the travelers' festive nature from the North Pole. And the travelers began leaving their sweets and eggnogs on their porches to stop them from spooking them. And they began traveling to the North Pole for their sweets and knocking on doors, and the towns began joining them. And one day Santa Claus was traveling through the North Pole with his reindeer, But he began lifting up his group with his wrist, and they would fly to the skies as high as they could. And he was sailing through the skies as a red comet through the cities and villages of the world. And made a stop to Sandow, a now thralling community. And he delivered his gifts to the people that didn't participate in the scaring of the townsfolks. And he would give them many gifts, and tell them stories in their homes, about how he loved how they didn't merge with the young animals dressed in frightening apparel that would scare the older people. And make them fear to travel to the town squares and enjoy in their parties. And eat at their buffets. So Mr. Claus told some of the deer and grasshoppers and hedgehogs his real name was Mr. White, and he enjoyed the joy in children, the younger animals. He too was an animal, he said, secretly a white reindeer with golden eyes and a red shiny nose. And all the town loved seeing him back in the day, protecting the North Pole, and making miracle cures for the town to aid them when flus and aches transpired. And that's why he remained, though now the towns began experiencing a variety of flus and Cranson. Cranciness. And he wanted to see what they thought of cheering them up, since they lived with the other animals in times past. And the grasshopper said he would run his legs and create a sonic sound and allow the townsfolk and his guest in his rocky house, Mr. Frog and Mr. Duck, and they would sleep that way, and even use it to rest and alleviate themselves at their feelings of inferiority at the youth's young dangerous energies and hostilities. So they all began getting thirsty, and Mrs. Swan prepared some food for them all, and the reindeers ate outside, and they all kept eating and were filled. So they all agreed they would play joyful music with bells and choirs about the joys of Christmas. And they would leave the creepers out. So Santa gave the group and children he enjoyed magic to travel to his villages, in prior times, with maps and locations where he was settling his giveaways, and his elves and other animal helpers like the raccoons and worms, and they would all have special activities. And they all now could fly to Santa Claus's villages and enjoy their lives. And eventually many of the quieter older animals began traveling to Santa's shops and villages, bringing gifts and eggnog, milk, and many other gifts. And the people were amazed on the combining of the two villages' fear customs as an unwritten notice from Mr. White. And they all began changing their behaviors and throwing out their ghostly apparels that the elves and squirrels had corrected from them. And Mr. White grew happy, and all the countries began doing the same, and eventually everyone came back to the goodness of the seasons, and stopped leaving food on their porches because they had friends and were no longer scared of the disasters of traveling and exploring their friends and the world's customs. But the fish were one day brought back to life that suffocated. And they began attacking the towns due to their deaths and hardships being ignored. So Mr. Fox was amazed and told the mayor, Mr. Wolf, as D. So Mr. Fox was amazed and told the mayor, Mr. Wolf, as did with the rest of town. And they all longed for a solution to their problems. Eventually the fish began leaving the North Pole and traveled to the oceans to see the other fish, and they told them about the prior hostility of the penguins, polar bear, walrus, and fox of the land. And they all agreed they should not eat fish. The sea dragons and sharks and whales, shrimp traveled to the North Pole and sent an agreement through the ocean shrubs with terms of their peaceful surrender as a sea community. And the mayors and town agreed. And the scarers came back secretly due to the fish's prior attacks. And they awaited for the fish salmon and all to come back, and they were to paint them, net them, trap them, and brainwash them to remain at their town fugitives. So the big bears and quick possums gathered and set traps in place with their powers and motivations. And as a few months passed, the schools of fish came and grew greatly, and they began settling in the town and towns nearby. And Mr. White heard of the fear coming from the individuals of the North Pole. And he remained neutral due to their innocence. And when Christmas arrived, instead of attacking the fish, they allowed them to stay near them, and the music's benevolence calmed the town again, and the bears and possums and all creatures admired the fish and other animals that began staying at their town. And the town began making a special tree decorated with different ornaments to give their town, and even decorating their environments and clothes with different decors. And their first foods and skins. And eventually all peace remained in the world. And the scaring will too return in times to come, and this time to stay.